Hotep, everybody. It is Sunday, November 30th, 2025, and I'm historian and national political commentator Michael Imhotep. Welcome to a special edition of the African History Network show. This is a class preview of my new 10-week online history class, Ancient African Empires, the Moors, and Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade. So class number one is going to start up today, as soon as I finish this broadcast. It's going to run Sundays, 4 p.m. To 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you can register for the class at my website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. I wanted to jump on today and do a class preview for you. And we deal with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade as well. Okay, so this is a very visual class, and we do have about 200 slides. We have also about 80 to 100 articles that I reference in the class also. Okay, so let's jump into this. How's everybody doing? Post your comments here. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a heart. Give us a like on this broadcast. Okay, so let's go to the slideshow presentation. So we see an unprecedented attack on African-American history, and we've seen it going back to 2020, 2021 with the attack on critical race theory. We see it intensified with anti-woke laws, etc., right? And we see it coming from the Trump administration as well. So some of the things that we will deal with in this class, we'll deal with ancient African empires, whether we talk about Ghana, Songhai, Mali, whether we talk about ancient Kemet, whether we talk about Nubia or Ta-Nehisi, etc. And we will also deal with archaeological evidence and evidence of an African presence in the Americas going back thousands of years as well. So if we just look very briefly at here, AtlantaBlackStar.com had a really good article a few years ago, 10 pieces of evidence that prove Black people sailed to the Americas long before Columbus. Now, you know, I interviewed Dr. David Imhotep that wrote the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence, a number of times on the African History Network show before he made this transition a couple of years ago. But this piece right here, if we switch over to this, according to renowned American historian and linguist Leo Weiner of Harvard University, one of the strongest pieces of evidence to support the fact that Black people sailed to America before Christopher Columbus was a journal entry from Columbus himself. In Weiner's book, Africa and the Discovery of America, he explains that Christopher Columbus noted in his journal that the Native Americans confirmed, quote, Black-skinned people had come from the Southeast in boats trading in gold-tipped spears. Now, you know, many people just celebrated Thanksgiving or Misgiving Day, or what Native Americans, or what I call a National Day of Mourning. And, you know, the National Day of Mourning has been celebrated going back to 1970. But the history of Thanksgiving going back to 1621, and the European settlers, the colonizers, ostensibly known as pilgrims, the genocide that they unleashed on Native Americans like the Wampanoag, etc., and other Native American nations, we can also trace that back and look at what happened with Christopher Columbus. So in Columbus on his 4 voyages, and he set sail August 3rd, 1492 on the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. And we see the devastation to the Taino, to the Saboni, in the various islands that he goes to, like Hispaniola, and Puerto Rico and Jamaica and things of this nature, the Bahamas, etc., right? And we see that Columbus helps to lay the foundation for slavery, racism, capitalism, and the exploitation of indigenous people. So when we study this history, we see that Columbus setting sail August 3rd, 1492 is directly related to the African Moors going into Europe, going into the Iberian Peninsula, today known as Spain and Portugal, in 711 AD. And they take the teachings from ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, from the Nile Valley region of Africa into Europe. And this is going to bring Europe out of the Dark Ages, so much so that some of the nautical instruments that Columbus was using on his voyages were based upon technology that the Moors introduced into Europe. So when we start understanding the chronology of this history, Okay. To understand the existence of something, you must first understand the pre-existence of existence. So we can't start studying the history of the transatlantic slave trade in 1441 with the Portuguese going into Mauritania. We can't start in 1526 with the Spanish, Juan Ponce de Leon, coming into what he's going to call Florida. We can't start in 1619 in Hampton, Virginia, or Jamestown. To understand the existence of something, you must first understand the pre-existence of existence. So we have to deal with thousands of years of history that leads up to that. Okay, so if we go to the next slide here and give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like on this broadcast. And this is a preview of my new 10-week online history class, Ancient African Empires, the Moors, and the transatlantic slave trade, 5000 BC to 1800 AD. Okay, so for years, Eurocentric archaeologists have largely turned a blind eye when it came to the discovery of artifacts from ancient Egypt being discovered in the Americas. According to Dr. David Imhotep, the author of the book, The First Americans or Africans Documented Evidence, quote, Egyptian artifacts found across North America from the Algonquin writings on the East Coast to the artifacts and Egyptian place names in the Grand Canyon, end quote, are all signs and early arrival in the Americas by Africans, by African people. And these would be the Khoisan, the short-statured Africans, partly the Khoisan. They have the oldest DNA on the planet, the Khoisan. This is also paired with a much earlier account of Black people with incredible skills at sea. Back in 445 BC, before the Common Era, the Greek historian Herodotus wrote of King Ramses III leading a team of Africans at sea with astounding seafaring and navigational skills. Together, both accounts would point to Africans sailing over to the New World before Columbus. And one of the things we're going to do in the class is look at archaeological discoveries. So we know that on the Greek island of Crete, back around 2011, 2012, there was a discovery and they found stone tools dating back 130,000 years ago or so. And they concluded that people had to have sailed to the Greek island of Crete. Crete has been an island for more than 5 million years. And they say that this pushed seafaring in the Mediterranean back thousands of years. So the deeper they dig, the blacker the planet gets, the more research they do, the older we get. And what we see is that that all of this is much older than what we were originally told that it was. And as more archaeological discoveries come out, we start seeing this. Okay. So this is just a sample of the type of information that we're going to deal with in the class. Now, one of the things we talk about is symbolism and connecting symbols to history. Did you know that the Washington Monument is an ancient African symbol called a tekken? A tekken, coming from the story of Asar, Aset, and Heru, who the Greeks called Osiris, Isis, and Horus. Is a symbol of transformation and resurrection. And we see that it is, we see when we deal with Freemasonry, we see that 50 of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence were Freemasons, okay? And we're going to see that symbolism in Washington, D.C. and the construction of Washington, D.C. So the Egypt, so here in this country, this was known as Egypt of the West, Egypt of the West. And I'm going to post the information here. You can register for this new 10-week online class that I'm teaching. And we're going to jump into class number 1 as soon as I finish this preview. Visit my website, africanhistorynetwork.com, africanhistorynetwork.com. You can register for it. It's on sale, $80 right now. It's a 10-week online class. And if you missed the class live, you can go back and watch the archived classes as well. Classes will be archived. Okay, now, Are blacks older in America than Africa? No, no, no. The Khoisan traveled from the Khoisan were in southern Africa. These are the short-statured Africans, derisively called pygmy or twa, and they're going to travel all around the world. And when you read The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence by Dr. David Imhotep, they come here going back something like 50,000 years ago, about 51,700 years ago or so. So they travel all around the world and they were here. Now, that does not mean the transatlantic slave trade did not happen. You have to understand the chronology of history. Migrations of people happen for different reasons at different periods of time. So because you have one group of Africans in one place, okay, for thousands of years, doesn't mean another migration did not happen thousands of years later. No, people migrate at different times for different reasons. Okay, so I've seen just some stupid ass nonsense out here on social media. And if you saw any of the interviews I did with Dr. David Imhotep, he said, no, just because Africans were here in this country going back tens of thousands of years ago, no, the transatlantic slave trade took place as well. Okay, and you can see it evolving with Christopher Columbus. When you study Columbus and where he went and what happened, and the Spanish being the second ones involved in the transatlantic slave trade. I mean, you study something like the Asiento de Negros of 1518, King Charles V signing the Asiento in 1518. These are things we deal with in the class. Okay, thanks for asking that question. That was Trusting God that asked that question. Thanks for asking that question. Okay, so when we studied the tekenu for plural, teken for singular, what the Greeks call obelisks, okay, we saw there were numerous tekenu all throughout Kemet, all throughout Egypt. Today they're less than 12. All right, ancient Egyptians called obelisk tekenu, and you may see it spelled differently. You may see it spelled with a W or U, and they were also used to tell the time in the past. Their pinnacles were basically covered in gold to reflect the sunlight. Historians say that obelisks represented immortality and eternity, and their structure helped connect the heavens and the earth. The structure helped connect the heavens and the earth. Currently, Cleopatra's Needle is the name given to 3 ancient Egyptian obelisks, one in New York City, one in London, and one in Paris, France. Okay. However, they do not all come from one Egyptian site. The obelisks in New York and London are carved out of red granite from the quarries of Aswan, a major source of stone for Egyptian antiquities. The 2 obelisks were commissioned by Nesubiti or Pharaoh Thutmose III for the Temple of the Sun in Heliopolis near modern-day Cairo, with each weighing about 224 tons and standing 68 feet tall. Fascinating article from FaceToFaceAfrica.com. Cleopatra's Needle, how 3 ancient Egyptian obelisks ended up in New York City, London, and Paris, France. Now, what's interesting is that people will see these obelisks, right? People will see these structures, okay? And they will then associate the structures, associate the tekenu with the people that dominate and control that city or country that are there today, right? So Paris, France, when they see it, when they see the teken there, they associate that, oh, the French must have built this. When they see it in New York City, they say, oh, they must have, those in New York City must have built that. But those were taken from Egypt to these areas where they are today. But ancient African people, black people, don't get credit for building them. Not only do they not get credit for building them, many people don't know that those are African symbols. So one of the things that I encourage people to do, and encourage my students to do, is to get a symbols encyclopedia, okay? And let me grab mine. Just give me a minute here. Right here. signs and symbols. And also here is The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence by Dr. David Imhotep. And then his last book, with a book that came out after this, The First Americans Were Africans Revised and Expanded, which is has even more pages, even more information, and built upon this one right here. Okay, because this one is out of print, but the one that came out after this, you can still get it. And I think I have to reach out to his wife, because I think his wife runs the website and is helping distribute his work. Okay, his widow. All right, now this is not the only signs and symbols dictionary or one, but this is one that I got years ago in 2011, August 2011, signs and symbols, right? And then when you open it, the first page, you see Heru. You see Heru as a falcon coming from the mythology of Asar, Set, and Heru, who the Greeks called Osiris, Isis, and Horus. You see Heru as a falcon. That's coming out of ancient Kemet. You look at the back, you look at the front, you see metal netter, you see symbols from ancient Egypt on the front. You see the caduceus, which is an African symbol, the caduceus. Okay. You look at the back, you see an ankh, which is the African key of the African symbol of eternal life, the African key of life, the ankh. Okay. All of this. All right. But this one here, this is in full color. And it breaks down the origins of symbols and signs, gives you an explanation of them. Okay, so this helps in the learning. Okay, to get a symbols dictionary. All right, now let's continue here. How's everybody doing? Ancient Egyptians called, let me go back here. Sorry. Okay, so here's a statue of Asar, Set, and Heru, who the Greeks called Osiris, Isis, and Horus. Okay, also known as the Holy Trinity. All right. Now, some things I say may go outside the circumference of some people's awareness. Just because you never heard it before, disagree with it, does not mean it's not true. Just means you have to do some research to understand what I'm talking about. All right. And what we're going to see, as we get deeper into the history, you're going to see that you're going to have ancient stories that are retold over thousands of years, and they get adapted to various people's cultures, and the names are changed, but some of the core messages are still there. They may be adapted to various people's cultures, things like that, but you're going to see similarities, striking similarities. Okay. So when we deal with Asar, Set, and Heru, who the Greeks called Osiris, Isis, and Horus, and known as the First Holy Trinity, and Heru is born on the virgin birth on December 25th. And I deal with this a lot when we go into the season of the winter solstice, shortest day of the year, and the sun that goes into the winter solstice, and it goes into its lowest point of the year. And then from December 22nd, 23rd, 24th, it's said that the sun stands still and does not move. Okay. And we see that on December 25th, the sun moves 1 degree northward. And this is said to, in ancient times, was said to be the rebirth of the Son of God, not the S-O-N, but the S-U-N. And December 25th marks an increase in the amount of sunlight each day. So in ancient times, December 25th was looked at as the birth of the Son of God, not the S-O-N, but the S-U-N. And when we look at this famous statue of Set, who the Greeks called Isis, holding the baby Heru or Horus, Set was the first queen of Kemet, or ancient Egypt. wife of Asar. And in the mythology, Asar is resurrected after his brother Set is killed by Heru, who avenges the death of his father. Now, the word, one of the depictions of Set you see is her with a throne on her head, and her name means she of throne. She of throne. Some say she is throne, and because to determine who sat on the throne in ancient Kemet, it went through the lineage of the woman's side of the family. Okay. And Set is associated with love and fertility. Now, there were approximately 1,200 tekenu, okay, or obelisks built in Kemet in ancient times, but only about a dozen are found in Egypt today. Actually, it's less than a dozen today. Many of the tekenu removed from Egypt are now in Istanbul, Turkey, London, England, Paris, France, Berlin, Germany, New York, Rome, Italy, Vatican City, and elsewhere throughout the world. The tekenu are now called obelisks by their new owners, and few know their origin or that they symbolize the resurrection of the African king Asar. So if you read Egypt on the Potomac by Tony Browder, my friend Tony Browder, I've interviewed Tony a number of times on the African History Network show. Egypt on the Potomac is a fantastic book, and this is one of the books we use in the class. Okay, now you don't have to buy any of these books to be able to follow along in class. And let me expand this here. You don't have to buy any of these books to be able to follow along in class. So we show you excerpts of the books on the screen, right? But let me try to flip this around here. But this is a fantastic book, Egypt on the Potomac. All right, now let's go to the next page, next slide. So when we look at Freemasonry, right, the word Mason is derived from the Latin words mass and sun, and Mason means child of light and expresses the desire to pursue light, which is a metaphor for the sun, which symbolizes knowledge. Okay. The term child of light, or sons and daughters of light, was first used to identify students who had completed 42 years of study in the temples of ancient Kemet. Many Masonic temples were modeled after the temples in ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, places where light or knowledge was imparted in a series of steps or degrees. And if you read Egypt on the Potomac, pages 18 and 32, Browder talks about this. You read Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization. Browder talks about it there. You read Stolen Legacy by George G.M. James. He deals with it there. So the concept of institutions of higher learning come out of ancient Africa. The concept of getting your credentials in a series of degrees, bachelor's degree, associate's degree, bachelor's degree, master's degree, PhD, doctoral degree, etc. Getting your credentials in a series of degrees, that comes from ancient Kemet. The concept of the liberal arts, George G.M. James talks about the 7 liberal arts. He talks about the trivium and the quadrivium. He talks about the arithmetic and the logic and rhetoric and different things like this, the liberal arts. All that comes out of Africa. All right, let's continue here. Now, Masonic temples are considered houses of light or temples of learning. Houses of light or temples of learning. The term Mason or child of light is a direct reference to the highest degree of the Kemetic education system. The 33 degrees of instruction within Freemasonry represent a fraction of the 360 degrees of instruction that comprise the Kemetic system of education, because we dealt with 360 degrees. Europeans learned less than 10% of what the ancient Africans knew. And when you deal with the study of the the Druids, and you deal with the study of the Roman soldiers learning, the Greek and Roman soldiers learning from the ancient Kemetic people. They learned less than 10% of what the ancients knew. Okay, so yet with less than 10% of the wisdom of Kemet, Freemasons have held positions of influence and power throughout the world for over 200 years. So if you deal with 360 degrees, 10% of 360 is 36. They learn less than 10%. So this is why the highest level Freemasonry is 33 degrees. All that comes from ancient Africa. So let me continue for just a second here, and then we're going to talk about reparations. But as a historian, my concept of reparations is totally different than a lot of people seeking monetary reparations. Did you know that 50 of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence and 13 of the 39 signers of the U.S. Constitution were Freemasons? Okay. Also, 4 of the first 5 U.S. presidents were Freemasons. Read page 18 of Egypt on the Potomac by Tony Browder. Now, what happens is that when the Moors go into Europe, these African Moors go into Europe, they take the teachings from the Nile Valley region of Africa. They're going to teach people freely. And you're going to have an order called the Poor Knights of Christ that are going to evolve in Europe. And they're going to be known as the Knights Templar. They're going to become very powerful. They're some of the most knowledgeable people in Europe. But keep in mind, at the time, somewhere 85% of Europeans are illiterate. You had kings and queens who could not read and write. Okay. And when the Knights Templar are rounded up in France in October 13th, 1310, they're going to be disbanded, and other groups of them are going to be disbanded. But the knowledge goes underground, is going to resurface as the Freemasons, like the Yorkshire Rites of the Freemasons and Rosicrucians and other secret societies, or what Browder calls societies with secrets. And those teachings are going to, from the Freemasons, are going to come to the land that's going to be called the United States of America, the 13 colonies first, and then the United States, by way of the quote unquote founding fathers. Because many of them were Freemasons. 50 of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence were Freemasons, where they're dealing with a watered down version of teachings coming out of ancient Africa. And so, Ken Barnes just aired on PBS, just aired his series dealing with the American Revolution. A lot of people don't know that the U.S. Constitution is based upon the Iroquois Confederacy. Okay. And the Iroquois nation of Native Americans, it was like 6 groups of Iroquois, and the way that they governed their society and the democracy that they had, the founding fathers admired that, and they based the U.S. Constitution based upon that. Now, some people may say, well, I ain't never heard nothing like that before. You said, I don't know where you got that from. Okay. All right. Let's take a look at this quickly. How's everybody doing? How you like this type of information? Who still needs to register for this new online history class that I'm teaching on Sundays? Ancient African empires, the Moors, and the transatlantic slave trade. Understand the transatlantic slave trade. Okay. I'm historian and national political commentator Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. Some people see me on Fridays on Roland Martin Unfiltered. And some people follow me on social media and follow me on my Facebook fan page, the African History Network, or on YouTube, Michael Imhotep. Visit my website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can register for this class. It's on sale, $80. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. And as soon as I finish this broadcast, we're going to jump into class here in a few minutes. We're going to jump into an introduction to the class. Okay. So you can register now. Let me show you this article, and I'm going to post a link here again for you all to register. And this also helps support the African History Network, helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, pay for all these services that I use, etc. And I have to, the platforms that I teach the class on, I have to pay for those as well. So a lot of people think, oh, this stuff is free. No, it's not. Let's look at this article quickly here. This is from history.com, the official website of the History Channel. The Native American government that helped inspire the U.S. Constitution. Okay, hopefully everybody can see this. The Native American government that helped inspire the U.S. Constitution. Hold on, let me change the alignment. I don't know. Let's change that. Okay. All right, let's look at this here. If we look at this article, the constitutional framers may have viewed indigenous people of the Iroquois Confederacy as inferior, but that didn't stop them from admiring their Federalist principles. When the delegates, let me zoom in on this. When the delegates to the Constitutional Convention met in 1787 to debate what form of government the United States should have, there was no contemporary democracies in Europe from which they could draw inspiration. Okay. And let me try to fix this. Oh, no. I hate it when they change these. Change the configuration I had. All right. There was no contemporary democracies in Europe from which they could draw inspiration. The most democratic forms of government that any of the convention members had personally encountered were those of Native American nations. I want everybody to see this, because let me ask you a question. Did you all learn this in school? When they talk about the Constitution and George Washington and Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, when they talk about the founding fathers, did they talk about the inspiration for this? Of particular interest was the Iroquois Confederacy. The Iroquois Confederacy, which historians have argued wielded a significant influence on the U.S. Constitution. What evidence exists that the delegates studied Native American governments? Descriptions of them appear in the 3-volume handbook John Adams wrote for the convention, surveying different types of governments and ideas about government. It included European philosophers like John Locke and Montesquieu, whom U.S. history textbooks have long identified as constitutional influences. But it also included the Iroquois Confederacy and other indigenous governments, which many of the delegates knew through personal experience. The U.S. Constitution was a group. Hold on. Let me see. Hold on. Okay. Quote, you had the Cherokee chiefs having dinner with Thomas Jefferson's father in Williamsburg. And then in the northern area, of course, you had this Philadelphia interaction with the Delaware and the Iroquois, because Delaware, that was a group, that was a Native American nation as well, Delaware. Okay. You had this Philadelphia interaction with the Delaware and the Iroquois, says Kirk Kickingbird, a lawyer member of the Kiowa tribe and co-author with Lynn Kickingbird of Indians and the United States Constitution a forgotten legacy. Yeah, I don't even know if it's forgotten so much, brother and sister Kicking Bird. I don't even know if it's forgotten so much, because I don't think people ever learned it in the first place to be able to forget it. I don't think people learned it in the first place. Okay, how many of you all learned this in school? Since now here's something interesting, right? When they have the 250th celebration of the United States in July of 2026, is Donald Trump going to talk about this? Because he's going to talk about all the white men and George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and, Ben Franklin and John Adams. He's going to talk about all these white men and how brave they were and things like this. Is he going to talk about this? Is Scott Jennings' punk ass on CNN, white supremacist Scott Jennings, is he going to talk about this? Or any of these white nationalists, white supremacists? Let me ask you a question. The people who are trying to sanitize the African American Smithsonian Museum because they think it talks too much about slavery, and they want a narrative that helps white people feel comfortable with the oppression of African people, are those people going to talk about this? Since the U.S. had trade and diplomatic relationships with native governments, Kicking Bird says thinking the constitutional framers weren't familiar with them is like saying, gosh, I didn't know the Germans and the French knew each other. So read the rest of this. Then it goes into similarities and differences between the Iroquois Confederacy and the U.S. Constitution, etc. Read the rest of this. This is from the History Channel. These are white people telling you this. This is from history.com, the official website of the History Channel. They're telling you this. I've read hundreds of articles from the History Channel's website, from history.com. It's amazing how much they admit, and Americans in general are so ignorant of history. It's amazing how much they admit. So, all right, let's continue here. Okay, how y'all like this type of information? Give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like on this broadcast. Let me switch over here. Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint presentation quickly here. All right, now. So then we deal with something like this. We deal with the retelling of the story of Asar, Aset, and Heru being retold as Jesus or Yeshua, because the letter J didn't exist until 1630 AD. Yeshua and Mary, okay, as the Black Madonna and Child. All right. And the Black Madonna and Child was being worshipped in Europe even before the Moors go in. The Black Madonna Child is there. And there are hundreds of statues and paintings of the Black Madonna Child all throughout Europe. But then coming out of the Dark Ages, you're going to have as you have a rise in white supremacy, you're going to have a rise in the European phenotype. And you're going to see the decolorized version with the European Jesus and Mary. Okay, and let me see what happened here. Okay, stand by. All right, now. So we also talk about some of the Neteru that we see, like Ma'at, the personification of truth, justice, righteousness, balance, harmony, order, and reciprocity. And the 7 virtues of Ma'at. We deal with the 42 admonitions or negative confessions of Ma'at, which become the 10 commandments. We deal with things like this, the weighing, the judgment scene, and the weighing of the heart against the feather of Ma'at. All right, now. So you see the 42 negative confessions of Ma'at as well. I have not committed sin. I have not committed robbery with violence. I have not stolen. I have not slain men and women, etc. So when you see this, then you see where the 10 commandments come from. One of the African empires we'll look at, ancient Nubia, Ta-Nehesi, also known as Kush. This from about 4500 BC, before the Common Era, to 500 AD Common Era. So ancient Nubia is also known as Kush. It was a region along the Nile River located in northern Sudan and southern Egypt. So today, the lower portion of Sudan and the upper portion of Egypt. In ancient times, that was Nubia. Let's continue here. It was home to some of Africa's earliest kingdoms, known for rich deposits of gold. Nubia was a major trading port for luxury goods that came from sub-Saharan Africa, such as incense, ivory, and ebony. Incense, ivory, and ebony. The first monarchy of recorded history was established in Nubia. The Nubians were also known for their exceptional archery skills that provided the military strength for their rulers. Kings of Nubia ultimately conquered and ruled Egypt for about a century. Monuments still stand in modern Egypt and Sudan at the sites where Nubian rulers built cities, temples, and royal pyramids. In the 1800s, the Western world's interest in Nubia was awakened by the rediscovery of ancient empires' monuments, which were reported almost simultaneously by individual British, French, and American explorers. Many of them found it difficult to credit indigenous Africans for building such a civilization. So what we see is an effort to steal the history, steal the legacy of ancient Africa and say, well, these people could not have been related to the black people who we have enslaved, to the Negroes we have enslaved. So these must have been something totally different. They must have been brown-skinned Caucasians. We can't believe that these people are related to these people that we have enslaved. Okay, so this is the mentality that you're dealing with. During the 1840s, German Egyptologist Carl Richard Lepsius asserted confidently that the Greek term Ethiopian, when referring to the ancient civilized people of Kush, did not apply to Negroes, but was used to describe reddish-skinned people closely related to the Egyptians who belonged to the Caucasian race. So they're saying the Egyptians belong to the Caucasian race, because these Negroes that we have enslaved, they couldn't have possibly done this. Okay. Yeah, these Negroes could not have possibly done this. So it had to be something else. Again, in 1852, when the American diplomat Bayard Taylor visited Sudan and gazed upon the temple carvings of gods and rulers with clearly African features, he also found it inconceivable that they could have been created by black-skinned Africans. Rather, he asserted, echoing Richard Lepsius, they must have been created by Egyptians or immigrants from India or Arabia, or an quote-unquote offshoot of the white race. Because these Negroes, it's impossible for them to have had civilization and had civilization before Europeans. It's impossible. So we're going to manufacture some type of pseudo history to steal the legacy from these African people. And we're going to say that Europeans built something in Africa that they didn't have at home where they came from. Now, give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like on this broadcast. Who still needs to register for this new 10-week online class that we have starting up today? Ancient African empires, the Moors, and understanding the transatlantic slave trade. I'm going to take you to our website right now. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have the information right there, right on the home page. So when you scroll down, go to our website here. When you scroll down, we have the information. And we're going to do an introduction to the class here in just a few minutes. I'm going to switch over to my online school. We'll do an introduction to the class. And you can watch the class on demand also. We do the sessions live. All the sessions will be archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. So the class is on sale, $80. The content is PG-13. You can use this with your children as well. And we'll have the lesson plan right here where you could download the lesson plan. So I'm going to update the lesson plan. You'll be able to download that for all of the class sessions. Okay. There's 80 to 100 articles that we reference in the class. There are, and let me make this a full view. There's 80 to 100 articles we reference in the class. There are 200 slides that we reference. Also, I put together all the slides. There's about 15 books that I reference as well. You don't have to buy any of the books to follow along in class. So I show you screenshots of the books also. All right. Okay, so register for that class and you can join us today in class. Because we're going to start here in a few at 5:30 p.m. We're going to start the class. All right, let me go back to the slide here. So I'm running behind today because it's a holiday weekend, and I ended up working overtime past 2 nights in a row, picking up overtime hours. So it's thrown off my whole weekend. All right. So there was an interesting revelation, interesting video here where you have this European scientist who's so surprised to find out ancient Egyptian pharaohs were Black Africans. Okay. And this is an example of what I'm talking about. Okay, let's go to this video. All right. Okay, so you see that Alejandro was shocked. He was mortified that Shemaiah was Black African. And he said at first they thought they were Mediterranean. So that's another way of trying to say they're not Black African. No, they're Mediterranean. There's some type of European. There's some type of branch of European. When you go study the history of all of these contortions and all of these deflections that European archaeologists and anthropologists came out with to say that these were not Black African people. All right. Let's continue. So then we deal with the Olmecs and the Olmec heads in Mexico. We'll talk about that as well. And Dr. David Imhotep in the First Americans or Africans documented evidence. He said a major ethnic group among the ancient Egyptian Nubians were the Manding people, also known as the Mandinka, and original Niger Congo homeland in the general vicinity of the Upper Nile Valley is probably as good a hypothesis as any for the origin of the Manding. The Proto-Manding migration had to have taken place during the African Aquilithic period. That was a wet period in Africa that lasted thousands of years at a time when the Sahara was fertile and had river systems and Great Lakes. Okay, read page 82 of the First Americans or Africans documented evidence. When the Manding reached Central America and began mixing with the local population, they were labeled Olmecs. The Olmecs were supposedly a mixture of the Manding or Mandinka and American Indians or Amerindians. Do not forget that the Manding made up the base of the Olmecs, so the Egyptians, the Manding, and the base of the Olmecs are related to each other. Okay, so this is just a sample of type of information we deal with here in the class. And then there's, this is Dr. David Imhotep. There's a interview he did on WKRP in Cincinnati, Channel 5, that really got into information dealing with his book, The First Americans or Africans, Documented Evidence. His book deals with 13 different types of evidence that show an African presence found in Allendale County, South Carolina, dating back at least 51,700 years ago. Page 14 of his book, they found artifacts. So Dr. Albert Goodyear in Allendale County, South Carolina, found artifacts, architecture, campsites, carvings, footprints in lava, genetic M174D haploid groups dealing with DNA and genetics, linguistics, paintings, skulls, skeleton instructions, and tools. 13 different types of evidence documenting an African presence dating back at least 51,700 years. So this is from page 14 of his book. Evidence of an African presence 51,700 years ago in a campsite in Allendale County, South Carolina, discovered by Dr. Albert Goodyear, who's an archaeologist at the University of South Carolina. Okay. Now, his book has 713 footnotes, and he's backed up by 7 peer-reviewed articles as well. Here's a picture of Dr. Albert Goodyear. This is an article from ScienceDaily.com. This article is from November 18th, 2024. It's 21 years old. New evidence puts man in North America 50,000 years ago. New evidence puts man in North America 50,000 years ago. And in the article, it says radiocarbon tests of carbonized plant remains. And let me switch this over here. Radiocarbon tests of carbonized plant remains where artifacts were unearthed last May along the Savannah River in Allendale County by University of South Carolina archaeologist Dr. Albert Goodyear indicate that the sediments containing these artifacts are at least 50,000 years old, meaning that humans inhabited North America long before the last ice age. Okay, so we're going to look at different archaeological discoveries, like this one here. This came from the New York Times in 2010, February 15, 2010. On Crete, new evidence of very ancient mariners. And they talk about, and I mentioned this a few minutes ago, they talk about how on the Greek island of Crete, they did excavations over the course of 2 summers. And they found stone tools that are at least 130,000 years old. And they found numerous stone tools. Okay. Stone tools found on the Greek island of Crete over 2 summers, archaeologists say are at least 130,000 years old, which is considered strong evidence for the earliest known seafaring in the Mediterranean and causing for rethinking the maritime capabilities of pre-human cultures. Crete has been an island for more than 5 million years, meaning that the tool makers must have arrived by boat. So this seems to push the history of Mediterranean voyaging back more than 100,000 years, specialists in Stone Age archaeology say. Previous artifact discoveries has shown people reaching Cyprus, a few other Greek islands, and possibly Sardinia no earlier than 10,000 to 12,000 years ago. So more than 2,000 stone artifacts, including the hand axes, were collected on the southwestern shore of Crete. So they didn't find 1 or 2 pieces of evidence. They found about 2,000 pieces. So this is just a sample of the type of information that we deal with. Then we get into dealing with the history of the Moors, because we look at this information chronologically. We look at these African empires chronologically: Ghana, Sangha, Mali, ancient Kemet, Nubia, all that. We're going to look at different African empires. But when we look at the deal with the Moors and the them getting the teachings from the Nile Valley region of Africa. The Moors' ancestors were known as the Garamantes. These were a Black African people living throughout North Africa. Hannibal Barca was Garamanti. Hannibal Barca of dealing with the Punic Wars. Okay. And when we deal with the Battle of Cannae, 216 BC, the Battle of Zama, 202 BC, the Moors, according to George G.M. James and Stolen Legacy, were the custodians of the ancient Egyptian mystery system. The teachings will bring Europe out of the Dark Ages. Good article from National Geographic. Who were the Moors? Now, there's a number of different sources we use in the class, but this was a good article here dealing with who were the Moors. The word Moor is derived from the Greek word moros, which literally means black or very dark color. The Romans adopt this word and call them Mari, M-A-U-R-I, Mari. The Mari were a Northwest African people who were very dark-skinned. The Romans were referred to the region of Northwest Africa as Mauritania, Mari, Mauritania. Mauritania is Latin and means the land of the black-skinned people. They also see the word Marish, M-A-U-R-I, Marish. That's in reference to the Moors. The name for a boy, Maurice, M-A-U-R-I-C-E, is in reference to a Moorish boy, Maurice, M-A-U-R-I-C-E. So when you, I deal with some of the work from Dr. Jose Pimenta Bay in the class, because Golden Age of the Moor, edited by Dr. Ivan Van Sertima. This is one of the best books dealing with the history of the Moors in medieval time. And there's an essay in here from Dr. Jose Pimenta Bay. He was one of the first interviews I did on the African History Network show back in 2010 when I launched the African History Network show. So I've been broadcasting 15 years, the African History Network show. But there's an excerpt from a lecture that he gave also that I show in the class. And he talks about how the legacy of the Moors, we see that in European history, we see it in European culture, their artwork, their architecture, but also in the names that Europeans have. We see it in their language. We see it in their names. We also see it in the European bloodline, because the Moors go through all throughout Europe and intermix with the European population and change the complexion, darken the complexion of many Europeans also. So we talk about, Tariq ibn Ziyad in 711 AD going into the Iberian Peninsula from Morocco into the Iberian Peninsula, which today is called Spain and Portugal, and where he lands. That mountain they call Jebel Tariq, or Tariq's mountain, and it's also called Gibraltar, or the Rock of Gibraltar. That's named after Jebel Tariq. Okay, so this is a fascinating class, and then we get into understanding Christopher Columbus and his 4 voyages and the legacy of that, and the devastation that Columbus brings. Also in the relationship between Spain and the transatlantic slave trade. Columbus never comes to the land that we call the United States of America. Okay. Closest he comes here is Cuba, which is 90 miles away. When we look at where he went on his 4 voyages, he goes into, he says, sail August 3rd, 1492 on the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. Now, keep in mind, this is later in the same year when the Moors lose control of Granada, their last stronghold, January 2nd, 1492. They lose control of that to Spain. Then August 2nd, 1492, the Spanish expel or kick out the Sephardim, the Sephardic Jews. Okay, that's the day before Columbus sails. Now, Columbus had been trying to get backing from King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella for somewhere about 7 years or something to finance his voyages, right? To discover these new lands, but also he's trying to find a westward route to the Orient of the East. Okay. So he lands in the Bahamas, October 12th, 1492. He called it San Salvador, which means Saint Savior. He said he named it after his Savior, Jesus Christ. When you study Columbus, he could not have believed, well, maybe he did. Well, he didn't believe in the Jesus of the Bible. You can't say you believed in the Jesus of the Bible and inflict horror and genocide upon the people. He goes into Cuba, Hispaniola. We know the Spanish call Hispaniola Saint Dominique. Okay. The western third of Hispaniola, the French are going to take that over in 1697 from the Spanish. And I'm sorry, the Spanish call it Santo Domingo. Santo Domingo. The French are going to call the western third of the island Saint Dominique, the colony of Saint Dominique. The Africans there will call it Haiti. And this is where the revolution begins, 1791, which we know of as the Haitian Revolution. Okay. But a lot of these areas that then fall into the hands of the British or the French and things like this, originally these were Spanish colonies. Jamaica, 1494, Puerto Rico, the West Indies, Trinidad, Venezuelan mainland, South America, Honduras, Panama, all that was originally conquered by the Spanish, conquered by Christopher Columbus. And you're going to see these various European nations fight over these new lands and others also around the world. We see the Spanish conquer the Aztec Empire, 1521, Hernan Cortez. And this is going to lead to the conquering of Mexico, which leads to Mexico having their, the War of Independence, 1810 against Spain. When you look at the Spanish-American War of 1898, this is Cuba fighting against Spain for their independence. 1898. All this is traced back to Columbus and his 4 voyages in Spain, right? And if you saw the movie Posse, the African-American cowboy movie Posse with Mario Van Peebles and Melvin Van Peebles, things like this, the war that's taking place that they are involved in because they're deserters from the army, the war that's taking place is the Spanish-American War of 1898. Okay, so then we get into understanding the transatlantic slave trade and what was it, and looking at that history. So we go up until about the year 1800, because I have a second class that deals with history from about 1800 to about 1970. Okay, so this is just a brief overview, and we get into the Asiento de Negros. The Asiento de Negros from Spain, signed by King Charles V in August of 1518. This is going to drastically expand the transatlantic slave trade. This is before the English get involved in the transatlantic slave trade. They don't get involved in 1562. You got all this that takes place from 1441 up until 1562 to the English get involved. But if you just start with the English, you miss the Spanish, you miss the Portuguese, you miss the Treaty of Tordesillas of 1494. You miss the Portuguese going into Brazil. All this, you miss the Portuguese and the Spanish fighting over the so-called New World that they're trying to conquer. So when we look at why, a few of the reasons why this type of information is important. Well, what you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you've been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So we just look at a couple recent studies here in the last few years. There was article, new studies find that positive feelings about blackness improve academic performance for black girls. Black boys as well, but this one focused on black girls. Believing that black is beautiful, an important mantra of self-acceptance and self-love, could pay major dividends in school, a new study finds. An article in the Journal of Blacks in Higher Education focuses on a new study from Sharita Butler Barnes, a professor at Washington University in St. Louis, which finds that young black women with strong racial identity are more likely to be academically engaged, curious, and persistent. More likely to be academically engaged, curious, and persistent. The survey looked at 733 black middle and high school girls in 3 socioeconomically school districts in the Midwest, according to the Journal of Blacks in Higher Education. The study, called Promoting Resilience Among African American Girls, Racial Identity as a Protective Factor, was published on the Child Development Journal website, and found that feeling positive about being black, along with feeling supported by their schools, correlated with the girls' greater academic motivation. Researchers also found that feeling good about your racial identity could act as a buffer for students in, quote, hostile or negative, end quote, academic environments. Okay, so check out this article here. New studies find that positive feelings about blackness improve academic performance for black girls. This is from theroot.com from January 10th, 2018. And it says persons of color who have unhealthy racial identity beliefs tend to perform lower in school and have more symptoms of depression. We found that feeling positive about being black and feeling support and belonging to school may be especially important for African American girls, classroom engagement, and curiosity. Feeling connected to the school may also work together with racial identity attitudes to improve academic outcomes. Then there was this study from 2012. TV kills black boys' self-esteem. TV kills black boys' self-esteem. And this talks, now we know African Americans watch more television than any other ethnic group or race, right? A new, precise, and exhaustive year-long study finds that watching television regularly distorts and ultimately destroys the self-esteem of young black males, who often find themselves comparing one another to the characters they view on air, leaving them feeling trapped and as if there are, quote, very few positive life paths they can aspire to. So Black America Web had this article. Other outlets had that article also. Okay. There was another article that dealt with this study. Black teens with racial pride do better in school. This came out in 2013. This was a study, a joint study by the University of Pittsburgh and Harvard University, University of Pittsburgh and Harvard University. And this study shows that when parents use racial socialization, such as talking to their children or engaging in activities that promote feelings of racial knowledge, pride, and education, we can also talk about studying history, it offsets racial discrimination's potentially negative impact on students' academic development. Okay, so when you have people, so this is a joint study. So we just have to understand they have the evidence of the impact, the positive impact that understanding one's history gives you. Okay. And this is why I say your thoughts create feelings, your feelings create actions and behaviors, your actions and behaviors create results. Okay, so this is a people's history and culture gives them their self-esteem, their self-development, their self-worth, gives them their VIPs, their values, their interests, and their principles. As two of my teachers, Dr. Leonard Jeffries and Professor James Small, correctly teach us. And this impacts our economic empowerment and how we engage in economics, and our political empowerment, how we engage in politics. Okay. This gives us our foundation. So this is why Europeans hold on to their history. But they want to sanitize ours and purge. America purged many schools, purged academic programs, purged the African American Smithsonian Museum of aspects of our history while they cling to theirs, including the traitors to the Union, the Confederates, the Confederacy, while they cling to that and resurrect Confederate monuments. They want to attack African history and African American history. So these are just a few examples, okay, of the impact that history has on a people, especially on African Americans and African American youth. All right, so we're going to wrap it up there. Visit my website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can register for this new 10-week online course. So we're going to teach this on Sundays, normally 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're running late today. So as soon as I finish this broadcast, I was going to start the class about 5:30 p.m. today. Because it's a holiday weekend, I'm going to do a quick introduction to the class so you could join us for that. Class is on sale, $80. You get 5 of my lectures free in digital download format, okay, when you register for this as well. Click right here, register here. You can do debit card, credit card, what have you. If you want to do it through Cash App, send it through our Cash App is here, $ the AHN show through Cash App. You click on the link. It takes you here. And if you send it through Cash App, follow it up with an email. You can email me through the website right here. Contact the African History Network at the top. If you send it through Cash App, follow up with an email. Let me know you sent the registration through Cash App. And this is our official Cash App account, $ the AHN show, SHOW. When you go to it, it'll say Michael. These are some fake African History Network Cash App accounts that have been stealing money from us. I'm still trying to get them shut down. Here's our PayPal link right here. Also, okay. So this is African empires, the Moors, and the transatlantic slave trade, 5000 BC to 1800 AD. Okay, so this is a new 10-week online course that I'm teaching. I've been teaching online history classes going back to 2017, and I put these classes together, put together the curriculum. There are about 200 slides in this class, 80 to 100 articles that we reference, 15 books. You don't have to buy any of the books. I'll show you screenshots of the book as well. The content is PG-13. You can use this with your children, okay? And It's very engaging. It is interactive also. There's a class chat, so you can ask me questions in the class also. You can see me, I can't see you, so you don't have to worry about that. All right. Okay, look, we're about to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's